The highly anticipated 2019 NBA draft finally came and went, and there was a ton of surprises that came with it, both in good ways and bad ways. As it happens every year, there were players that were probably drafted way too early and players that inexplicably fell a lot further than most fans and analysts thought they would. One area that tends to fly under the radar, though, are those that go completely undrafted, especially during the lead up to the draft when there's a good amount of buzz around them saying that they would, at the very least, be second round picks. This brings us to the topic of today's video, where we will be looking at 10 players that I am very surprised went completely undrafted, and that I also believe will be able to prove their doubters wrong and make it in the league. Also, this video isn't ranking them in order, so the order that I discuss them in doesn't necessarily matter. But before we start though, make sure to subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first player that I want to discuss that didn't hear their name called is Luguentz Dort out of Arizona State. Out of all of the undrafted prospects, this one was definitely the biggest surprise. After looking through countless mock drafts over many months, his name appeared in the first round in quite a few of them, and early to middle second round in every other. Going completely undrafted is not something that anyone saw coming, myself included. Dort won Pac-12 Freshman of the Year last season, and he plays tough, hard-nosed defense, which is something that you just can't teach. It also helps that he's an absolute tank, looking more like a linebacker than a basketball player, and he uses his strength to overpower his matchups regularly on both sides of the ball. Yes, he does definitely need to improve his jumper, and he can sometimes play a bit out of control, but players with his physical tools and motor going undrafted doesn't happen very often, and I can definitely see him making a ton of teams regret on passing on him. The next player that went undrafted that I want to discuss is Jontay Porter out of Missouri. His story is one of the most unfortunate ones from this draft because he's someone with legitimate first-round talent that has struggled mightily with injuries at the worst times. He was highly considering entering the draft last year, where he would have been a fringe first-round pick, but he chose to return to school for a second season because he thought he could raise his draft stock to lottery status, and many people believed this was very possible. Then his luck started to go south, and he tore his ACL in a preseason scrimmage. Plus, this spring, he re-injured himself, setting himself back even further, and the combination of those two injuries really killed his stock completely. When healthy though, he was an incredibly ideal modern-day big man, capable of both stretching the floor and producing in the paint, while also being a really good passer and playmaker for his position. Whoever takes a chance on him will obviously need to have patience, but somewhere down the road, he could come back and pick right back where he left off. The next player up on this list that I want to discuss is Shamorie Ponds out of St. John's. Ponds, like Porter, probably could have came out in last year's draft and heard his name called, but he chose another year of college to try to increase his draft stock, but it backfired. For him, injuries weren't the reason though, it was just that he didn't really show the necessary improvement scouts were looking for out of him. With that being said though, I still think it's ridiculous that he went completely undrafted, because the skill set he does have as a pure scorer capable of creating his own shot at a high level is something that not many players possess. Being slightly undersized also definitely didn't help his cause, being only 6 feet tall, but he's still able to put pressure on defenses and with his aggressiveness and scoring mentality. The Rockets signed him to their summer league team, and if he impresses there, I could see him getting a bigger offer for sure. Next up on this list is Naz Reid out of LSU. Coming into college, Reid was seen as first-round talent, having just been named a McDonald's All-American. He's incredibly talented in so many ways, being a terrific athlete for a big man, very mobile up and down the floor and in transition, and he even has a solid perimeter jump shot. However, his season at LSU was fairly inconsistent, having some games where he flashed that potential, and others where he looked like a non-factor. The The biggest question mark amongst scouts were about his motor and willingness to work hard, which will understandably turn teams off at the pro level. But you still take guys with that much talent with the hope that some strong motivation will get the most out of them. What probably knocked him out of the draft completely was an injury he suffered during the pre-draft workouts, but it wasn't a serious injury, and passing on him completely for that still seems a bit harsh. Minnesota is taking a chance on him in Summer League, and I like his odds of impressing this summer. The next player up on this list is Phil Booth out of Villanova. With all of the recent examples of older, experienced guards carving out roles on teams lately, such as Jalen Brunson and Fred VanVleet, I'm shocked that a winning pedigree, maturity, and solid production is still going overlooked in the draft. Booth played a big part in Villanova winning 2 national championships in his time there, and is overall just a really smart player. He gets to his spots with ease and can break a player down with very advanced skill sets that you see from veteran players often. Point guard is a position where IQ for the game is a must, and Booth fits that bill. And while he may not necessarily be the most explosive athlete or the fastest guy on the court, he simply knows how to play. The next player up on this list is Terrence Davis out of Ole Miss. Davis didn't really gather many headlines during the season, but after the year ended, he started to go through his pre-draft process and really started to turn some heads. His energy is infectious, always giving it everything he has out on the floor, and when someone with his physical gifts do that, it really is a sight to behold. He's 6'5", incredibly quick, with top-tier athleticism that he uses both to play physical, hard-nosed defense and to attack the basket with force on offense. He was a top 40 prospect on big boards of several mainstream media publications and should have been a no-brainer as a second-round pick, yet here we are wondering what went wrong and are now expecting him to make teams regret passing on him. Next up on this list is Tacko Fall out of UCF. Fall has been a national sensation for quite some time now because he simply towers over everyone else on the court. He stands at 7'6", which would instantly make him the tallest player in the NBA, and that alone is enough to create some intrigue. Plus, it's not like he wasn't productive in college either, having averaged double-digit points each of his last 3 years and always shooting a high percentage. Also, trying to finish at the rim around him is a tough task for obvious reasons. Unfortunately, the reality of the situation is that he's really not very mobile at all and very slow, has no range outside of the paint, and is incredibly predictable. The NBA is trending towards pace and space, and he simply doesn't fit there. He's an interesting player to keep an eye on moving forward, but this is probably the least surprising omission from the draft on this list. The next player up on this list is Jalen Lecque, who actually managed to come out of high school this year. Because of a technicality where he played a 5th year of high school, Lecque entered the draft hoping to hear his name called, but unfortunately that didn't happen. He's gained national attention throughout his high school career for his jaw-dropping poster dunks and highlight plays, but overall as a player, it was obvious he needed some work. He would have to play point guard in the NBA, but his ability to run an offense as one was questioned because of the fact that he really hasn't done it against high-level competition. He was the 41st ranked prospect in his recruiting class, which is already indicating that he probably wouldn't have necessarily been a one-and-done player. But now that he's committed to this move, he has to put in a lot of work to carve out a role in the league. Is it possible? With his athletic potential, of course it is. However, he will need to work on becoming more skilled in order to do so. Next up on this list is Zach Norvell out of Gonzaga. Gonzaga was a very good team this year and made a solid Elite 8 run in March Madness, and Norvell played a big part in that, so it's not like he's been out of the public eye. He has a legitimate NBA skill, being his three-point shooting, with range that easily extended to the NBA range in college, so in that regard, he should have no problems adjusting. Some of the biggest criticisms of him have been for his shot selection at times, but in the NBA where he'll likely only be used as a role player, he won't need to try to do too much and can focus on doing what he's best at. The Lakers signed him to a two-way contract after going undrafted, and with their depth situation looking questionable at the moment, he may be able to work his way into some minutes. Lastly, the 10th player on this list is Tyus Battle out of Syracuse. Battle is another upperclassman that got left out because of the lack of upside, but he had a very good career at Syracuse as one of the best scorers in the ACC at the time. He's a strong isolation player, gets to the basket well, and has a serviceable perimeter jump shot. At 6'6", he also has solid size for a guard. He's not very flashy and doesn't necessarily stand out in a single category that he's great at, but he simply knows how to play, and with a little hard work, might be able to impress the Timberwolves enough to keep him around after signing for this summer. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more NBA content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.